Hi there, my name's Damien and welcome to my Excel script demonstration. So this is part 2 of 2. Please make sure that you watch the first video if you haven't seen it already, where I'll show you the capabilities of Excel scripts, specifically the ability to load data dynamically into an Excel file via Power Automate, but also how to create a table and extract data from an existing Excel spreadsheet. I'll walk you through my cloud flow and then my Excel script. So in this demonstration, using the Excel file that was previously populated in part 1 of my video, I'm now going to turn the data into a table in Excel and return that data back to my Power Automate cloud flow, both as an array, but also using the list rows present in a table. So let's jump into the demonstration. So here we are again in Power Automate looking at our cloud flow, and if you haven't seen my first video, make sure you go back and watch part 1, which covers how to populate an Excel file dynamically. Today we're going to look at part 2, which is about creating a table in Excel and retrieving values from that table in 2 different ways. So if I just expand that scope we have here, and we'll just quickly run through the different actions. So the first action is relying on the Excel scripts. And again, we're calling on the location, the document library, and the file, which in this case is called just a file like before. And then we're calling on the script called create Excel table. And in this particular scenario, there are no variables that need to be supplied to this script. So unlike the first demonstration where I was providing variables and arrays, this particular script has no input. It's all about the output. So this is a compose action which will simply return the result back from our script above, and that will contain the data within the table as an array. Then using that result, I look to repurpose it and include our new headers and select all the individual values from that array of 50 records. Now I have a third compose action, or third action here, and it's called new table in Excel. And the reason I've included that is the table that gets created in my script is called exactly that, new table in Excel. And then our final action here is to list rows present in a table. So for those of you who have worked with Excel in the past and have got tables in Excel, you'll maybe use this action, which will simply look at a file and retrieve the values of a table back as an array for you to work on later on in your cloud flow. So that's the basics of our script covered. I'll just quickly minimize all these actions, and I'm going to jump across into SharePoint and let's launch just a file. So the state of my file right now is halfway through demonstration 1, which is I've populated some random cells here, and just to demonstrate how we can populate these select cells, and I have what looks like a table, but at the moment that data is not in the table format. So if I try to call a table from this file using the list rows action, there'd be no table for it to find, and therefore it wouldn't retrieve any data. I'm going to jump into the Automate tab now and into my All Scripts, and we'll go ahead and look at my script. So here we have the create Excel table script. And like before, we have the definition to get the first worksheet, which is the worksheet we have here. And then what I'm looking to do is I want to identify that range that we have on the worksheet. So the starting point and the end point of the range of data. And that's quite useful later on because I want to define the table all the way down to the last row and the last column, because at the moment I don't know where it is. So this is a very useful expression here, get used range. And here I get the last row of the worksheet using the range from above and get the row count. So we now know how many rows we have within that used range. So we end on row 58, for instance. And because this is dynamic, if we'd supplied another row or another 50 rows, we'd be able to get the new end of that table. So the first thing I do after that is to go and look for the word ID. And the reason I've done that in this particular scenario is I have a lot of spurious data at the top here. So we have from row 1 down to row 7 some data that's not really relevant. I don't want it to be part of my table, and I know that my new table will begin with the word ID. So I do a find here for ID, and that allows me to get the address, which just so happens to include the word sheet 1. And you can see there in the example, sheet 1, A1, B4. I don't need the word sheet 1, and there may be an easier way to get this so that I just get the cell, but I've used the replace expression to remove that string from the range that's returned. And so with that range, I'm then able to create our table range, which is going to be based on our active cell here. So where we find ID, which in this case is A8, and we want it to end on column F and using the last row. And the last row is based on this expression up here, which is based on the row count. So hopefully you're still following where we are, but basically what we'll get is a range from A8 down to F58, and that's completely dynamic. The script will go away and find that for us. In fact, I'm going to add in 51 Damien Bird. Not tried this previously in all my testing, but we'll give it a go. There we go. This might go all wrong, but we'll give it a go, see what happens. So using the next expression here, we go ahead and create a new table based on that range that we've created above, the table range, and the new table is called new table in Excel. So if you've used the action before within your Cloud Flow, you'll have probably had to call a table, and so the table name is as we see here. I then go and get that table and get the results of that table as an array, and the purpose for that is to allow me to return those table values back to my Cloud Flow. Why have I done that? To me, it's one of two options. Because we've created a table, we can actually use the list rows in table action in order to retrieve that data that is here. But equally, if we wanted to retrieve specific data as an array, we can return it back to our Cloud Flow, so it will appear in the results of that Office script action. So without having to use any more actions, we potentially have the array or the data that we're looking to retrieve from the Excel file using the Excel script. So I'm going to go ahead and close this script here, and I'm going to jump back into my flow and do a test run. So our flow is now running. It'll probably take about 10 to 15 seconds to complete. The first part will run again, which is just about populating the data at the top here. And the second part will again repopulate the data over the top of the existing rows we have here. But the most important thing is we just saw there in the flash of blue, we now have a table defined. And if I scroll to the bottom, the row that I added there with Damien Bird and my job title and my location has also been included in this table. So despite it not being part of the initial array, because the function looks at the last possible row, it has retrieved row 59, and that's allowed myself to be included in the results back to our flow. So if we jump back into our flow here, and if we just expand the results of our scope, we can expand this action here, and if we have a quick look, we can see the results of our array being returned. So without actually having to do anything else, using that Office Excel script, I've actually now been able to turn what was a flat Excel file into a table and then retrieve that data from the table there into an array. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see that we've got myself included here too. And all I've done with the first compose is exactly that, to return the results, so no difference there. The select action is where I repurpose that data into a more neat array for my purpose. Now equally, you might be able to do that in Excel. In fact, I'm pretty sure you can do it in Excel using Excel scripts, but my expertise as such is in Cloud Flows, so I've used the Cloud Flow select expression to repurpose the results from that script. As before, I've got the table name, which is new table in Excel, which we saw referred to in the Office script. And then let's assume that we haven't returned the table or the data in our Office script here. Instead, we've decided to use the list rows present in the table. So if you remember when we first looked at that file, whilst there was data in the Excel file, there wasn't actually a table present. We've been able to run this script. It's created a table based on the dynamic range, and then using the table name that we have in this select action, in this compose action, we're able to call that table and then retrieve that data here as a result. And you can see here it picks up the table row headers which we provided: ID, first name, last name, email, job title, and country. So that completes the demonstration. That's part 2 of 2, showing you how to not only populate an Excel file dynamically using an array that we see here, but also then converting that data that's on an Excel file into a table, either returning it as a result within the Office script or returning it via the list rows present in a table action. And so whilst I've achieved these all in one Cloud Flow, your scenario might be that you have a template Excel document that you want to populate, in which case you'd use the first scope, or maybe you have a document already that you're receiving in an email and it's formatted in a way that you want to convert that data into a table and retrieve those results back into your Cloud Flow to share in a SharePoint list or somewhere else in the Dataverse. If you want to see any other demonstrations on Excel scripts, or you've got any queries about how to use Excel scripts, please leave your comments below. And as always, please make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.